All right, and we're back. So today we're diving into the transformative ideas of Maria Lugones, specifically her concepts of world traveling and playfulness and loving perception. Each of us exists in multiple worlds shaped by our backgrounds and our experiences and our identities, right? So it's not even that each of us has our own world, and that may or may not be part of what she's arguing here, but more so that we all have multiple worlds, right? We are moving through and between different worlds at basically all times, depending on the context that we're in. So think about how you interact at home versus when you're in class versus when you're at your job or when you're out with friends, right? You sort of become a different person, and I'm using air quotes there. And so Lugones invites us to recognize and embrace these shifts as a form of cultural knowledge. But it doesn't really stop there, right? Lugones emphasizes the importance of playfulness in these sort of interactions. So what if we approached new ideas and new perspectives with curiosity rather than fear, right? With openness rather than defensiveness? What if we can view our writing as a journey, a playful journey, an exciting exploration of thoughts and feelings rather than just something that you have to do for this class? And then there's loving perception, which is a call to see people for who they truly are beyond the surface level sort of appearance, right? This is about building genuine connections in our diverse communities and fostering empathy and understanding in our everyday lives. So first, when Lugones talks about world traveling, she's referring to how we all live in different social spaces or worlds, right? And these worlds are shaped by things like culture and race and gender and class, right? Socioeconomic class. Sometimes we get to be queer out away from our family more than we are in our family. And also sometimes our roots, our language, the food that we eat, the cultural practices that we partake in. Sometimes we feel more safe, obviously, in familial settings versus in professional settings. The Lugones is encouraging us to recognize that everyone around us is living in their own world and moving between their own worlds, shaped by their unique experiences and their identities. And understanding this makes us more compassionate and less likely to judge people just because they are different from us. So when Lugones talks about world traveling, she's describing something big, right? Moving between social and cultural realities. But she makes this concept, a big one, easier to understand by relating it to smaller everyday experiences, right? And we can use this same strategy in our writing, connecting these broader, complex ideas to things that people know and do in daily life. Lugones' concept of world traveling, which is, again, the ability to move between different cultural, social, or even emotional worlds with sensitivity and respect. That is a key one there, with sensitivity and respect. That aligns also with Kimmerer's idea of reciprocity with the natural world, right? We've talked about that in previous weeks. In Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer encourages us to see the land and the more than human world as something that we are in relationship with, right? Not as something that we are separate from, trying to dominate and exploit. And this sort of relationship requires a kind of traveling, which is moving between the human world and the natural world with an understanding of how interconnected those worlds really are. So just as Lugones is asking us to move between social and cultural worlds with care, Kimmerer asks us to be mindful of the ways that our natural world is not something that we ever actually leave, right? We don't enter nature. It is something that we are always already a part of, and we must exist in that world with humility and gratitude. And then in How to Tame a Wild Tongue from last week, Gloria Anzaldúa explores how language is intertwined with identity, right? Particularly for historically marginalized communities who exist in between different cultural worlds, right? Anzaldúa doesn't just navigate these different linguistic worlds, she's living in them, right? And she's often shifting between them to survive and to thrive. And in both of those cases, there's this recognition that different worlds come with different power dynamics. Whether it's a bilingual person navigating two different languages or someone shifting in between different social identities, there is a power difference there. There is power at play. There is power that is informing that switch, that decision to switch, or that ability to switch, right? The availability to switch. Anzaldúa's radical defense of her Chicano Spanglish is an act of loving perception towards herself and towards her community and her identity, much like Lugones encourages us to lovingly perceive and nurture the parts of ourselves that may not fit easily into existing dominant frameworks. So Anzaldúa teaches us that writing is not just an academic practice, but an act of reclaiming our voice and nurturing our inner self and our own ideas and resisting those forces that try to tame us and tame those ideas, tame the imagination, tame that wild tongue. So writing, like language, can be wild and untamed, and that is where its power lies. So when it comes to writing, Kimmerer and Anzaldúa and Lugones, they all remind us to nurture a reciprocal relationship with our subjects, right? What we are writing about, our readers, and also with ourselves. So Lugones teaches us to be mindful of others' worlds, right? While Kimmerer extends that mindfulness to even include non-human life. So when we write, whether it's about social relationships or the environment, we are participating in this act of world traveling. We are entering into new spaces of thought and communication, and both Lugones and Kimmerer ask that we do so with an open heart and a sense of responsibility, right? And so playfulness, as Lugones explains, is about approaching these different worlds with an open and flexible mindset. So instead of being rigid and defensive when we consider new perspectives that maybe challenge our own, playfulness means you engage with them with curiosity and without fear. Right? You are not defensive, but actually curious about what truth might be in there. And I'm using a lowercase t truth there, not an all preaching capital T truth. Playfulness is it's not in the form of mockery or any sort of the power has to be removed from the play. Lugones encourages this playfulness when interacting with different worlds, and we can sort of apply that same playfulness in our writing by being open to exploring new ideas in a lighter, more approachable way. When you're writing about something that feels a little bit crazy or unfamiliar, or it feels like you're really putting yourself out there with offering that idea, maybe you hold it really close to your chest and you're finally going to put it out there. Instead of worrying that people won't get it, try being curious and playful with your language, right? Ask questions and explore different possibilities. And you can let that excitement sort of show through. You don't have to write in this serious, heavy tone and put on this posturing attitude of yes, I know all things. We don't have to do that. Playfulness invites the reader in, making them feel like they're on a journey of discovery with you, like you're looking at this problem together, rather than I'm telling you how this is, right? So don't be afraid to ask questions in your writing. You can say things like, what if we looked at this differently? Or imagine if the world worked this way? Or imagine this situation. What if this happened, right? By keeping things a little bit more playful and light and suggestive, we make it easier for people to engage with ideas that might be new or difficult to grasp. And then it is a little bit of a softer way to launch some of those ideas that maybe you hold close to your chest. It's a way to get them out there and start the conversation. And so Lugones' concept of playfulness in moving through these different worlds parallels Kimmerer's focus on the power of storytelling, right? And storytelling as a means of connecting with the world. So for Lugones, playfulness is essential to engaging with the unfamiliar without a rigid sense of superiority or defensiveness. It's an openness that allows for transformation and connection. And similarly, Kimmerer uses stories to weave together indigenous wisdom and science and ecology, right? She understands that stories are not just ways to convey information, but a playful and creative means of learning and teaching. And both authors invite us to approach the world, and especially our writing, playfully with curiosity rather than judgment. So in academic settings especially, this can be really liberating, right? Lugones encourages us to embrace the joy of moving between worlds, and Kimmerer shows us how storytelling can braid together different types of knowledge. And as a writer, we can engage in this sort of play by allowing our writing to blend personal experience and academic knowledge and creative exploration, much like Kimmerer does in Braiding Sweetgrass. And finally, that aspect of loving perception is truly about seeing people for what they are and who they are, right? It's easy to make snap judgments about people based on what we see or what we assume to know about them, right? What they look like, how they speak, where they're from, and what all of that must mean about the way that they move through the world, right? But Lugones challenges us to go deeper than that. She asks us to see the full person with their complexity and their humanity. So at a big, diverse school like Ohio State, we're constantly surrounded by people with different stories and different struggles and different dreams and aspirations, right? So practicing loving perception means not reducing people to stereotypes, but instead really trying to understand and appreciate their experiences without also assuming that their experience puts yours at stake somehow. Like holding both experiences, holding both lived experiences and letting them both be their own version of some lowercase t truth, right? Like this is true for you and this is true for me. That is something that is practiced through loving perception. So this attitude can help you build stronger and more genuine relationships, and it can make your time in college, but also in this lifetime on this earth, more meaningful as we learn from the diversity that surrounds us. So Lugones' idea of loving perception, of seeing people fully without reducing them to stereotypes, for example, this can also guide and should guide how we write about people and places and ideas, right? So instead of oversimplifying and reducing things to easy labels, take the time to show the complexity of what it is that you're talking about. When you write with loving perception, you show respect for your subject, right? What it is that you're writing about. So when we write about something, we have to give it that depth. We can't just say like, oh, for example, farm life is tough, right? Show what that toughness looks like. Describe the long hours, the feeling of the dirt under your nails, the pride of the harvest, right? By writing with care and with depth about every little detail and giving permission to yourself to find meaning in those simplicities, so to speak, we're inviting readers to really see and feel the weight of what we are describing and talking about, just like Lugones does with her ideas of worlds and with identity. So when we're writing about big, complex ideas, and I don't want us to shy away from these big, complex ideas because we don't know how to write about them. I want us to write about them using these sort of strategies, right? Relating it to everyday experiences, being playful with our exploration, and writing with depth and with care. And that will make our writing more accessible, but also more impactful. So for Lugones, this ability to world travel with ease and sensitivity, but also with this grounded sense of knowing oneself, the ability to adapt to different contexts in the form of caring for others, right? Being able to shift what sort of care is needed in any given moment. And her mother, as a figure, embodies this skill of balancing different worlds and roles, whether it's her family or her cultural background or just broader society, right? And so Lugones specifically mentions how her mother taught her the value of perceiving others lovingly. being able to look past whatever is being brought up in you as a reaction to whatever it is that they are doing or saying or being, right? Being able to interrogate that with a little bit more compassion for both people, right? Keeping both people's humanity intact. So Lugones presents her mother's actions not just as maternal, but as a form of intellectual and emotional practice, right? Highlighting this connection between care and understanding and relational knowledge. So in this example, it is situated in sort of a gendered motherhood, but from an intellectual and emotional standpoint, it becomes removed of gender. It becomes something that is just about being in this world. Right? So while Lugones speaks of loving perception as seeing that full humanity of people and situations with care and with empathy, Kimmerer's work is filled with that same kind of love, though in her case it is directed towards the earth and all of its ecosystems, right? All of its beings. And she talks about how everything is interconnected and how this requires us, it doesn't ask us, it requires us to develop a relationship of love and respect with the world around us. So both authors are calling for a fundamental shift in how we perceive and relate to others, whether that is human people or non-human beings. And Lugones' loving perception can be seen as a relational practice, right, in relation to each other, while Kimmerer expands this to also include, obviously, the plants, the land, the animals, and the ecosystems. But for both authors, this shift in perspective and perception is an act of care. So when it comes to writing, this becomes a practice of nurturing our ideas with care and with sensitivity, right? When we approach our subject, whether it is a human relationship, a story, something in the natural world, if we do it with loving perception, you create a kind of authorship that is responsible and empathetic and ethical and deeply aware of the interconnectedness of all things. So often when we think about writing, especially academic writing, it feels so serious and it feels so rigid, right? The quote is, the phrase of speech is written in stone, right? It's serious. There's something at stake. There's weight to it. But if we take Lugones' advice to approach different worlds with playfulness, we can shift our relationship with writing, right? We can lower the stakes. So our inner child, for example, thrives in places where there is room for exploration and imagination and curiosity. So by allowing our writing to be a place of play, for example, we can foster that same sense of joy and openness that Lugones is sort of encouraging us to find. So as we wrap up today's exploration of Lugones' ideas about world traveling, I want us to reflect on how these different concepts resonate deeply in our lives as students and as community members. So in a diverse environment like Ohio State, right, understanding that everyone navigates their own social and cultural worlds, right, that awareness alone can enhance our connections and foster greater empathy, right? And this awareness is not just an abstract concept, but it directly impacts how we communicate and collaborate and create. And as we write, whether it's for academic assignments or for personal reflections or to some city person, some authority person, right? Maybe we're advocating for our community, but we should remember that our words carry the power to bridge these worlds, right? They can express our unique perspectives while also honoring the complexity of others' experiences. So Lugones' call for playfulness invites us to approach our writing with curiosity rather than fear, right? To get over that linguistic mental block and just say the damn thing, right? So consider how you can let your creativity flourish, perhaps by exploring unconventional ideas or experimenting with different formats or different sentence structures. Maybe you start with a poem, maybe you include a drawing, right? But engaging with your writing playfully can make it a lot more enjoyable and also simultaneously invite your readers to join you and have a better time joining you and be more willing to join you and follow your your train of thought, right? Of intellectual exploration. Please remember, academic writing does not have to be stiff or overly formal. It can be infused with your personality and curiosity and a sense of wonder. So in the context of writing, but also far beyond writing, we should strive to world travel with sensitivity, to engage playfully with our ideas, and not take ourselves so seriously in the process, right? And also approach our subjects with loving perception. And by doing so, we can elevate our communication and foster deeper connections, creating a richer and more inclusive academic environment for everyone. So as we continue to think about this as thinkers and as writers, I want us to seek to understand, appreciate, and celebrate the diverse worlds that shape our shared earthly experience. All right, I'm looking forward to reading your work this week.